It is mid-June and we are once again doing our scape harvest, mainly on our hardneck garlics, but also to some extent our elephant garlic. This is something we need to do each year in a very moist, fertile, easy growing season. Scape removal doesn't matter a huge amount. In a year like this where it started out kind of dry and hot, leaving the scapes on means a smaller bulb. So even if we didn't want to harvest the scapes for food, we would still want to do it, but luckily scapes are delicious, so we get 2 yields in one. Bigger bulbs and a nice treat for now. Probably the absolute peak moment for maximum tenderness for a scape is when they're just coming out. They're really, really tender. More or less all of this is edible. Sash, you normally snip that onward and compost that, right?
Or make stock.
Or make stock out of that. But this is a really, really tenderini. It's basically a green bean and a garlic mixed together. Once they get a little bit of a curl, this is kind of the standard place where a lot of folks harvest. If it curls some more, you're starting to get a little bit tougher. Yeah, it's more scape, but the bulb may be getting smaller as a result. So you really want to catch them somewhere between just coming out, maybe one little loop. Once they've stood up, then the scape harvest, maybe it doesn't even matter. At that point, the garlics put a lot of effort into that scape. You probably should still remove it, but it's hard pressed that it's actually a good food at that point. So catch them when they're young, that really matters.
Each year I always try to preserve as many of the scapes as possible. I make pesto that I freeze, I pickle them and can them, I dehydrate them and use that powder, or not powder, but like little bits. But we've got a lot of that stuff, so I'll probably do a little bit this year, but mostly I prefer to eat them fresh and we'll give them away.
So what we tend to do is we just go through and we flex the stalks right at the point where they're emerging from the garlic. If you flex them over with a little bit of a pressure behind them, they tend to snap in a really nice clean way. You can cut them, but it's much, much slower. The snap works well.
Or pull it out all the way.
Yep, there are folks that like to pull them out. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. When it does, the part that gets pulled out is probably the most tender, sweet thing you could ever imagine from a garlic. I think there's mixed opinions on whether or not when you pull them, are you leaving a little bit of a weird hole that water can get trapped in and create disease? We haven't explicitly seen that, but intuitively that doesn't feel like necessarily the best method to me. I like to just flex them over and crack them, and then we like to have a clean crate in the field. These garlic scapes do not need washing. They've been off the ground, and so long as our hands are clean and we store them in clean crates, we can just bring them right into the kitchen and process them. It's really simple notes on scapes. If you're growing hardneck garlic or elephant garlic, this doesn't apply to softneck, they don't make scapes. But if you're growing hardneck in particular, wherever you live, you're looking for the scapes to be just emerging, nice and small. Even though it's a smaller harvest, it is a much sweeter, nicer product, and it allows the garlic to focus more effort into bulb formation. If you're much further south and you haven't plucked any scapes yet, might be a little late, but you can always do an experiment. Part of how I learned that it matters is there were dry years where I picked the scapes off of most of the garlics, but I left the scapes on a few, and some of those heads that had the scapes were half the size or a quarter of the size of the ones where we plucked the scapes. In really wet years, really good abundant rainfall years, whether we picked them or not seemed to not really matter. So your results may vary, but probably worthwhile harvesting and exploring some wonderful recipes with this great harvestable bit that facilitates garlic making a bigger bulb. Thanks for watching.